Hey guys, it's Mike here, and welcome to another video we're bringing you today on Dragon Ball Z, in which we're going to be talking about another character in this update, in this installment of Were They Helpful? In which we're going to be talking about this specific character who all of you know and love and fear. But before we get into that, I'm going to introduce my two, I said that right, very special guests. First off, from Spice, Australia, his name is...
Hello there, beautiful friends from around the world. I'll be your guest, Super Jayain, today. No, I'm only kidding, guys. I'm just doing an impersonation of the legendary Blackenfist, who was also in this.
Damn, now you ruined my introduction of him.
I've ruined his intro.
No. By the way, Mike, you're sounding like Dale Cali right there when you said Dragon Ball Z. Last time on Dragon Ball Z. Sounding...
That was my intention.
Sound like the old school narrator. Any of those guys who actually know that, the narrator before Cal Haybear.
Yes, indeed, and he sounded awesome. But the guy who's talking, and who was just talking right then, is the legendary Blackenfist. Introduce yourself.
Hello guys, I'm Blackenfist, and I just gave you the random Dragon Ball Z fact of the day.
Sounds good. But anyway, the character we're going to be talking about today is Mr. Popo, Kami's attendant, and the one we all fear because of his horrifying face. But anyway, we're going to be talking about whether or not he was helpful in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and wherever else, I guess. So, to start this all off with, I'm going to send it over to the guy who's very knowledgeable about the original Dragon Ball series and probably knows a lot about Mr. Popo. His name is Blackenfist. Go.
Well, the biggest thing that Mr. Popo has done in the entire series, obviously, was the training of Goku, which, in my personal belief, is probably the most important training that Goku has ever undertook in the entire series. I feel like the training that Mr. Popo gave him on Kami's Lookout was the basis. It was like Goku's base for all the training and all the strength that he would soon gain when he's in his grown-up body as an adult. That the foundation was laid, I think, with Mr. Popo. Now, you can also point to a lot of other little things that Mr. Popo did, but because Mr. Popo obviously was introduced way later on in Dragon Ball, that's pretty much the biggest thing that he did. Obviously, in Z, he did a lot more. He appeared a lot more in that anime. So one of the other things he did was he let Bulma go to Yunzabit Heights and to find the Namek spaceship that the nameless Namek came on to
Yes.
from Namek to Earth.
And, I mean, that was incredibly helpful because, I mean, they would never have even been able to get to Namek otherwise.
Exactly. And also, one thing that I guess it is shown a little bit in the series, but it's mostly off screen, is that it's pretty well established that Mr. Popo is the one who keeps the lookout in running order. He's the one who cleans it. He's the one that maintains it. He's the one, that pretty much keeps that place spick and span and running in tip-top shape. So there's also that whole reason as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's just shown through all the things you mentioned that he can be very helpful. But Jay, do you also have any other things that you'd like to address when it comes to how helpful he is? Examples you can point out, because I know when we were talking off air before this began, you point out an excellent example of where you think Mr. Popo was incredibly helpful in the series.
I mean, there's a couple of examples. The ones in Dragon Ball, obviously, probably was the most helpful when he was training Goku at the start of, or midway portion of Dragon Ball, because that was really fundamental for Goku's character development. But I definitely feel there's plenty of portions in Z where he's helpful. Like Blackenfist said, he gathers, or shows Bulma where the ship is in Yunzabit Heights. And then other portions of the show, I liked in the Gallic Jr. arc, he was basically there as a support character for Kami when he was going down into the former Guardians area, basically, and he had to fend off the Guardians. He was there for moral support. That was just one small thing. But the other 2 points, I feel he was really, really helpful in the series, was obviously when Frieza and Goku were fighting on Namek, he was the one to gather the Dragon Balls and summon Shenlong. There was obviously the other part where he was looking after the kids during their fusion training. I found it quite comical when they were fighting him, actually. But I'm trying to think of another one. There was one more where he was really helpful. That's it. When basically you have Mr. Popo to thank in the Buu arc for the Dragon Balls remaining, because When Boo is using his human extinction attack and he goes into the time chamber, comes back out of the time chamber, and he basically turns everyone into candy, Mr. Popo is obviously responsible for throwing Dende off the lookout. So he saved Dende's life there. And if they didn't have Dende, they wouldn't have the Dragon Balls, obviously. So that was probably his most helpful point in Z, was he's kind of looking after the Earth in the regard that he's always protecting the Guardian. He's always gathering the Dragon Balls for Kami. He's saving Dende's life. There is several points in the series where he has, key points where if he didn't do that, then obviously the series would end then and there, and the bad guys would win in some regards. So he's definitely a character that does get left in the background because he's not one of the main cast, and he's not really relevant in Dragon Ball Z portion of the show in terms of strength anymore. He was definitely strong in Dragon Ball. So he gets pushed into the background a little bit for those reasons, but he's still a very important character in my opinion, and he's very helpful.
Absolutely. And one thing also that you had even mentioned off out of the video is that it was because of Mr. Popo that they actually thought to have Goten and Trunks fuse in the first place.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Popo was like, oh, they're basically the same strength and they're pretty much the same size, so shouldn't they be able to fuse? And this was, Goku thought, okay, Gohan and Vegeta are dead. We're kind of screwed when it comes to killing Boo, but Mr. Popo suggested that, and that changed everything. So, in that case, Mr. Popo was incredibly helpful, but yeah, he trained the Z fighters, the humans, when it came to preparing for the Saiyans. Mr. Popo was the one who helped Vegeta to find that spaceship, and of course tended to the lookout. I mean, he's the one who would go in there and stock the hyperbolic time chamber. Considering that he would do that, you'd think that Mr. Popo would be a lot stronger, considering that he would always go into that time chamber and restock it. Maybe he is, with a pecking order and all. He just didn't want to insert himself into things.
Not to mention as well, I feel like even though it's never stated outright on screen in the manga or shown in the anime, I would definitely say whenever the lookout is damaged, like during the Garlic Jr. arc or during GT, I feel like he would be the one to, like after Goku and Oob have been training, I feel like he's the one that would obviously, like Juan and yourself mentioned earlier, he would probably maintain and repair the damage to the lookout. So that's helpful in that regard.
Yes, if I recall in the Daizenshuu, for example, they actually went in depth and talked about, Mr. Popo's background. And if I remember, they actually said that he is basically bound to the lookout. Now, of course, he has gone other places other than the lookout in the past, but it is possible that since he is essentially bound to that, heavenly realm, that he is the one who is able to basically repair it, maintain it, and do everything about it. And of course, as we know before, he was helping out the previous Guardians or Gods of the Earth as well, because he was there even before Kami came.
Yeah, that was stated in the Garlic Jr. arc, if I remember correctly.
And so he also was helping to train Dende, how to be the new Guardian, as well as Piccolo was doing that as well. But Blackenfist, do you have any other examples or final thoughts when it comes to how helpful Mr. Popo was in the series?
Mr. Popo has been one of those, side characters. He's a character that, he's kind of a background character. There's a lot of these characters in Dragon Ball. He mostly just appeared to train Goku, and then he went into the background. But he's always just been there doing random things. It was always little things, really. But one of the things I've always found fascinating about Mr. Popo, and I know that this really maybe not has been in the series proper. This was been in supplemental material, but I always found it interesting that if the Guardian ever dies or it leaves or there's no Guardian for whatever reason, because Mr. Popo is immortal and he is on the lookout, and he has a strong commitment to whoever the Guardian is, and of course his duty to keep the lookout in running order it's his job to actually find a new Guardian. Because no one else obviously would be alive if the Guardian has already died. I always found that to be extremely interesting into the character of Mr. Popo. Now, of course, this has never been in the series proper, because the only time that there has been no Guardian was the time that Kami fused into Piccolo and Goku solved that problem for them. But I always found that to be quite interesting.
And that carried over also into Whis, because, I mean, the attendant, again, of another god in Whis with the god of destruction, said to Goku that if Beerus ever dies, he would, consider making Goku and then eventually in Super Vegeta the next god of destruction. So it seems like it also carried over into that. Although it is kind of interesting when you think about it, Mr. Popo is immortal. He is powerful compared to most Earthlings, you know what I mean? It's kind of interesting that he himself would not try and assume the role of God, since he essentially is there forever. But I guess maybe it's just one thing that he is unable to ever ascend to that mantle.
And there's one more point I will bring up too. Obviously, it's just a minor one, but during the fight between Cell and Goku, I believe it was, he was able to help Dende to keep track of the fight between the two, because Dende was young, new to the role, and he was obviously coaching Dende on how to feel the movements out and basically watch a fight or watch how things are happening down on the earth from the Heavenly Realm or the Lookout. So he obviously is there to also coach the new Guardians in their roles and how to do it. So that's definitely a fact, I would say.
Absolutely. So I feel like, as we've established here with Blackenfist and Jay with their examples, that Mr. Popo is really one of the most useful characters in the entire series, because his training of Goku, finding of the Dragon Balls, maintaining of the Heavenly Lookout, he just really has shown that he's incredibly helpful. So when it comes down to it with our determinations, I think that we could say that Mr. Popo was helpful. This has been another segment on Dragon Ball Z, in which we are bringing you a video on Was Mr. Popo Helpful? I'd like to thank Jay and Blackenfist for coming out. Don't forget to check out both of their channels down below in the description and on the screen that I'm showing you right now. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. As I always say, stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.